Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
And a very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline. My guest today is Mr. Upul Jayasuriya, President's Counsel, and also, importantly, the former head of the Board of Investment Sri Lanka. Good evening to you, Mr. Jayasuriya, and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Faraz.
Now, obviously, we have a president who stepped in to sort out an economic crisis, and he was elected by his peers in parliament, and various things are happening. But one of the things that hasn't really been sorted out is the availability of dollars, and that appears to be a big problem. One of the ways that dollars flow into the country is through foreign direct investment, or FDI. What do you have to say, Mr. Upul? What do we have to do to attract these dollars in? Have we had any new investments over the last 3 years, for example? And what do we have to do?
Well, unfortunately, from what we have seen during the last years, there have been a down situation with regard to the FDIs into the country. This is really tragic and also alarming. At an alarming level, this has been happening. Well, with the incoming of the present president, Mr. Wickremesinghe, well, he's a person who is aware of this current situation in the country, and as far as the obstacles that are there with regard to the FDI process, he's aware of it because he was the Prime Minister for a period of 5 years, ending in 2019 December. So, in fact, even at that time, he tried his best to appoint people like even Mr. Bhaskar Lingam, which was a very positive attitude of his government at that time. But I found during my tenure for about 2.5 years at the BOI, I found that the issue is not at the BOI. Issue is at various line agencies. There are about, now for instance, if you say, there are about, say, it is an infrastructure development project. Well, it takes about at least 3 to 4 years to get the approval process in place. 3 to 4 years. So if somebody is willing to come here and then park his money or waste his time and then go through about 70 to 80 institutional approvals one has to obtain. So that is why I found that even the visiting US Senator Chris Van Hollen has commented today, I saw it in the papers, that he has called for a single window certainty and with regard to paving the way for the investment process for the US companies in Sri Lanka. And this kind of similar sentiments were expressed in the recent past by the Australian High Commissioner and also the EU High Commissioner. Because this is something alarming, and I don't think anyone has taken steps yet, or rather some administrative efforts have been taken, but I'm yet to see some statutory safeguards been introduced, without which I do not think that this process can be put right.
Well, what sort of statutory processes do you envisage, Mr. Jayasuriya?
I have been proposing that the BOI law, the most important aspect of the BOI law with regard to the investment process is the Schedule B.
Yeah.
Schedule B. And as per the Schedule B, there are several laws like the environmental law, customs law, Inland Revenue law, and the exchange control. The authority, by virtue of those laws, BOI law is vested in the Board of Investments. As far as the BOI law is concerned, a change has to be made with regard to the Schedule B. As per the Schedule B, the statutory authority that is vested in several institutions such as the Exchange Controller or the Inland Revenue Department or the Customs Department and the Environmental Authority is to be exercised by the Board of Investments. So now you will see that the new law with regard to, which is not included, new exchange control law has come in, that is also not referred to in the Schedule B. So immediately these laws have to be, by an amendment, has to be brought under Schedule B. But this, what is there at the moment is utterly insufficient. Now we have to change. There is a law that has been there for the 41 years in the past. So this has to be revamped. We have to bring in other institutions like the electricity board, local government, maybe the forest department, the housing, the road development. All those issues have to be brought in, because that is where it is getting blocked. If you want to get the electricity connection to a particular investment, you have to go around the bush, and then you have to go through the local authority, the electricity board, and you can never get it through. So we have to have a situation where within a matter of, say, 2 weeks, the respective line agency has to give the approval. If they fail to give the approval within that 2 week period, then the owners of giving such approval should be vested back on the board of directors of the board of investments. And once they give the approval, then all those line agencies have to comply with such approval process, whatever the approval that has been granted, even the building approval that has been granted by the local government, local authorities. Once that is done, if the respective agency does not respect this particular approval that has been granted by the board of investors, that should be made an offence, which is amounting to corruption. If that be the case, then the Bribery and Corruption Commission has to take steps immediately to redress the situation, and then take the people into custody, and then file prosecution and so on. So without taking the stick into the hands of the entire process, and also these public officers can never be made to move. Every time is blaming the politicians. I don't say that. That's the right thing to do, because it's the initial blockage is from the bureaucracy. Their position is that we don't decide. You do anything you want. It's not our problem. We get our pension, we retire, we get transferred, we go away, we go home and then enjoy our retirement benefits. So they don't care. Unless you put it at the source, this can never be put right.
So what you're suggesting is some sort of audit of each officer's performance to see what was their hope, what was their expectation, and what was their delivery, like any audit process. Are you saying that we don't have such a system in Sri Lanka, where it's just higgledy-piggledy at best?
Well, what I'm suggesting is not exactly audit, but it should be a compliance process, a new process that has to be brought in. And at different levels, the entire the responsibility should lie with the Board of Investments. At the moment, Board of Investments, that was meant to a single window authority. Now, that is why this US Senator is also asking, which is I think he's doing. But only this is said so many year after year, even for decades. But we have never been able to create that situation. So what I'm saying is, without the statutory support, there should be some suitable amendments be brought into the BOI law, without which you can't put this right.
What is it? I mean, you were at the BOI, so you would have been privy to what potential investors are asking you. In essence, what do they want from us here in Sri Lanka? Do they want land? Do they want power? What do they want?
They want everything. Without land, you can't have an investment. Without power, you can't put up their factories, and then they can't operate the factories. So these are basic requirements. In any other country, within a matter of now, if it is in Singapore, you can incorporate a company within just 2 minutes. It is not the case in Sri Lanka. You see, the companies, I'm not saying they are inefficient. They are doing their best to fast track the process. But we have to do something more than that. Why should there be patience? And also, there's another thing that we must remember. We must eliminate the human contact as much as possible. It should be all on. That is where this corruption also takes place, even with the local authorities and the electricity board and all these places. The approval process should be channeled through the BOI, but with emails, and then those facilities must be made use of, so that such approval can even be applied for, not necessarily from Sri Lanka, but also from a foreign country.
What kind of investment, the facilities that Sri Lanka has in terms of our land, in terms of the the labor, availability and so on. What does Sri Lanka lend itself to? What kind of a business does Sri Lanka lend itself to?
One of the biggest issues that we have right at the moment is labor. The previous government has been encouraging all the labor in this country to go out and then get jobs in foreign countries and then send some dollars into the country. There was a cabinet paper that was put by Honorable Basil Rajapaksa at that time when he was the Minister of Finance. The so-called homegrown solution. The first item was to send 75,000 people to Middle Eastern countries and get them to earn their dollars and then wash plates or whatever, come what may, and then send them back to Sri Lanka. But the problem that we are facing here is when an investor comes to Sri Lanka, he is short of labor. If you take the Katunaga zone alone, at any given time there are about 6,000 to 8,000 people that are on contract labor, which is supplied by manpower agencies. Every day morning you will see about 1,000 people waiting outside the zone, trying to get some jobs. But when you are trying to have them employed in a permanent basis, you can't get. Then this problem was identified by President Premadasa. That is why he amended the law to say earlier it was only the zones, the factories that are located in the zones can enter into Section 17 agreements. But he changed it to say that such agreements can be entered into with regard to any investment anywhere in the country. So that was much most welcome because of the dearth of the labor. That is why these 200 garment factories were set up all over the country and then they were running fairly efficiently. So one of the biggest problems that we have is that, of course, that is the same kind of problem that is faced with many other spheres, not only banking sphere, the hospitals and the other businesses, the software industry and so on. So there again, it's nothing to do particularly for the investment as such. The government has to look at it separately because it's counterproductive. Because why they all started going to other countries seeking greener pastures is that the salary that they get, the expenditure has gone up, the cost of living has gone up, but in the meantime they are also getting taxed. So we have to, the pendulum cannot strike from one end to the other. That's what happened. I think we should have brought the tax system to what it existed at the end of 2019. But what we did, it was, we went to the other extreme and they started taxing all the public servants and also the corporate employees at a very high level. That is why most of the people have got sick of it and started looking for opportunities overseas.
So it's not necessarily a good idea to send our workforce abroad, even though the lure of foreign exchange is very much there. I mean, I did a quick calculation. If you sent out 75,000 extra people and they each sent back $500, it would only amount to around $235 million in a year. Not much when you consider that we are getting around $7 billion from that territory.
Definitely. The damage that we are causing ourselves is much greater than the few millions of dollars that they relate into the loved ones in Sri Lanka.
How would you, if you were to advise the government, what would you say to them in terms of the BOI? Would you say, forget the labor one-stop shop? Would you turn it into truly a one-stop shop? Is that what
the particular BOI law has to be changed? That is the first, second, and the third priority. I can see that the President Vikram Singh is very much because he is aware of this, because he's the one who pioneered the Biagama zone, which is the good thing to happen. That was second Sri Lanka. So he knows this, but most of the measures that he tried to bring in and then the changes that he wanted to make were all administrative. But in Sri Lanka, nothing can be done administratively. That is how even he brought in Mr. Pascal Lingam. That was much welcome. But in the meantime, without changing the law, which is now archived after 4 decades of use, in 1978, I too was involved in the drafting of that law at that time as a member of the Attorney General's Department. But now much water has flown under the bridge. We have to change it to suit the current situation with artificial intelligence and all that is there with the software facility that we have. we must move away from this human aspect of it, human involvement in this process of application and evaluation and approval process. The human element has to be eliminated, and then it should be left to be tackled through the software process online.
When you see, you hear what's happening around us, where various people are trying to boost the numbers in terms of technologically savvy Sri Lankans, like coding engineers and so on and so forth. Sri Lanka doesn't feature anywhere close to, say, Bangalore in terms of, tech savvy people in concentrated form in one place. How far do you think, A, do you think that's a good idea to go that route? And B, should the government be considering the investment into one major place where heavy tech is available to any investor from abroad?
It's like this, most of the software companies that even some of the companies that were Sri Lankan companies that were even quoted in the stock exchange in New York, they started in a very small way, sometimes in a garage and things like that. The company that I'm referring to.
Yes. So
it's kind of place where you're operating. I mean, it's a plug and play. They can operate from anywhere you like. This is what I did when I was at the BOI. I had this idea of giving particularly with regard to the software industry in our country, which was at that time generating an income of about nearly close to $1 billion. That's the same amount of money that is being generated from the garment industry as a contribution. Though the export proceeds are going to be in the region about 5 to 6 billion, the inward remittances, the contribution to the GDP is about maybe about 20% of that, because most of the components, the fabric, all the other components are imported. So here is the net value is a contribution to the GDP. So what we did was we took over the building that was there, our old office in I can't say our old office, the BOI office in Petap in Fort. That was 6th thing. Then it was occupied by the foreign ministry. I got rid of them and then called for some proposals from different people, and they have now set up Hatch Center. We want to do it as a joint venture with the BOI and them. But after I moved away, the board decided that no, it's better to allow them to do it on their own. So they're doing a marvelous job. Large number of people, they have won awards after awards. Now the idea is it's an incubator to most of these young software engineers and software developers. They can call any investor to come there and then have a meeting there. It's there. So they can go to any place. There are so many desktops where they can be working. They don't have to have even the hardware. All that is being provided there at a very reasonable price. The same people, Head Center is also conducted by one man. The one man behind the show is Mr. Jeevan Jana, a young entrepreneur, who is also responsible for the Orion City. Yeah. So something we need. Now, on the same line, we started back office of the London Stock Exchange at that time. And when we gave the approval, I mean, if we didn't work out, somebody said, there was some problem, why did you give approval like that? Somebody walked into my office and they said, Jayasuriya, I want to bring the London Stock Exchange to Sri Lanka. Can you give me a letter? I said, you have not even made an application. I said, okay, wait. I got down the director investment and I told him to bring an application, got him to fill the application. Then and there, now I didn't have any letter from him from the London Stock Exchange. I got him to fill the application, helped him, and then gave him the letter and said, we understand that the London Stock Exchange is going to come to Sri Lanka. We are very much excited about this proposal and we welcome them and we will be giving all the facilitation if they do decide to come to Sri Lanka. Then what happened was they decided to come. They came in 3 months' time, and they are set up in front of New Olympia, the theatre there. Near, don't believe there are 1,500 employees, Sri Lankan girls, young men and women who are working there. I mean, this is what we want. But it could be done now. I must also pay this compliment to Mr. Anjit Fernand, who was the chairman of the UDA. He immediately allocated that building to them. We did the entire approval process. Within 3 months, they started. And some British minister came there. So we had to have the fast track operation. We must think out of the box. You can't say, no, you have to get the application, download the application on the website. You send it by email or come and fill the forms and they give. That won't do anymore. We have to go out that extra mile.
But to go that extra mile, do you think that our members of the Sri Lanka Administrative Service, our public servants, do you think that they are confident that they won't end up in court just because they took some decisions?
This is one of the problems that we are facing. Whether they are genuinely failing to take that decision or for some reasonable comprehension of some fear that they are not taking the decision is not known. But most of the time, their failure is based on either lethargy, or they simply don't understand what it is about, or simply they just say, no, I won't do it. Because they might think that if I do it, there will be 100 questions asked, why it got done. If I don't do it, only one man will be asking me questions, that's the investor. So that is why I say that this has to be spelled out statutorily. They must be given that onus. If they don't do it, it will be an act of corruption.
I've often heard, Mr. Jayasuriya, that ministry secretaries, they bemoan the fact that they don't want to do something because they fear the repercussions, and that when they retire, they won't get their pension. Instead, they'll be fighting a fundamental rights case and so on.
If they don't take the decision, then they must be changed. If they can't do that, then that means they can't do their job. Then why should they be sitting there and getting a salary for nothing that they do? I mean, they are not suitable to hold such positions. Such onerous responsibility cannot be held by them. The heat of the kitchen is too much for them. Then they must move out of the kitchen. They are not the ones who should be taking such decisions. There must be young people who should be facing such positions with education, of course, with necessary background. There are enough and more people that we have. We don't have to bring in people from overseas.
Isn't it a shocking sort of testimony of our inability to attract foreign investment, that over the last, let's say, the last 3 years, foreign investment really has been a trickle, and it's almost sort of drip by drip, drop by drop?
Yes, I will explain it in this way. If you take the ease of doing business, out of the 10 criteria that are there are 4 of them with regard to the judiciary and the rule of law, enforcement of contracts, and payment of taxes, and liquidation process, and so on. Right? And actually, there is also now in the Treasury, if you take the Treasury, there is a PPP unit, public-private investment unit. Tell me one private investment that has been successfully concluded, and it is going on well. One government will sign the contract or the agreement and then agree various things. Another government will come and then go back on the whole process. So will anyone come here? And then if you go and file action in that case, I can give you one example. The court case has taken nearly 25 years. 25 years. The Commercial High Court has given the order in favor of the investor. The same order was appealed upon by the Attorney General, went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court affirmed the same order. By that time, the award made by the Commercial High Court, which was 174 billion, has now swelled to 2.6 billion. Who is responsible? On one side, the Attorney General's Department is responsible because at the top of a hat, they file an appeal.
Yeah.
And then the interest all that accumulates. And the person who decided to file the appeal is no more. Either he has got transferred, or he has been promoted, or he has been appointed a judge, or whatever. So there is no accountability. There is no transparency. There is too much of immunity that is being given to the public officers. Now, in other countries, any private lawyer, if you do the wrong decision, you are responsible for it. Then that is why the lawyers have to take insurance coverage for any wrong professional advice that they give, because they'll be sued. So that kind of situation should be there not only to those in the private bar, that should be there even for those in the official bar. So if that be the case, then they will be twice. There was another case where the award was only 10 million rupees for use of some heavy equipment by one of the government departments in the north. They didn't pay the money, they filed action. And the court decided in their favor and said, okay, pay the 10 million plus 800,000 rupees for a month as damages until such time you paid it. They went to Supreme Court, then the meter was clicking by that time. Supreme Court appeal was dismissed. The person who decided to file the appeal, I don't know who that was, maybe he is at somewhere. And it has now by that time become 236 million. The 10 million has now swollen to 236 million. They still didn't make that. They waited for another 7-8 years. Then they decided to pay the 236 million check. That was paid. Then the investor said, okay, thank you very much. You have made the 236 million payment, but now there is another 130 million to be paid because they delayed. So who is paying for it? Finally, it is the taxpayer who is paying for it. Not the person who decided that at the treasury, not the person who decided to file the appeal in the treasurer's department. Nobody. The government of Sri Lanka is paying for it, and the money is taken from the coffers that are collected from the members of public.
Upul Jayasuriya, it's been delightful talking to you on Newsline today. Thank you very much. And we hope that the powers that be will take on board the suggestions made by a former head of the Board of Investment Sri Lanka, Mr. Upul Jayasuriya, who shared those thoughts with us here on Newsline. Thank you very much, Mr. Jayasuriya. Look forward to seeing you on our network again. And it's now time to say goodbye. Take care. Have a great evening as much as you can. And as always, God bless you all.